They called him a junk collector for 40 years, a disgrace to the county, a man too stubborn to throw anything away. What none of them understood was this: in less than 3 weeks, the same people laughing in his barn would be standing outside it, asking for help. On a cold Thursday evening in April of 1985, a 70-year-old farmer named Raymond Cutter drove his rusted pickup into the gravel lot of Harper County Town Hall and quietly took a seat in the last row. He already knew why he was there. 2 weeks earlier, a formal complaint had been filed against him by the Harper County Agricultural Improvement Committee, a group of younger farmers who believed the county needed to modernize if it wanted to survive. The complaint used polite language. It talked about property standards and community image. But the meaning was simple. They wanted him to clean up his farm, empty the barn, haul away the piles, get rid of everything they called junk. Because from the road, Raymond Cutter's place looked exactly like that. Rows of rusted engines sitting under torn tarps, broken combines with missing headers, grain augers leaning like dead metal skeletons against the side of the barn. Inside, shelves climbed all the way to the rafters, stacked with bearings, belts, chains, shafts, pulleys, hydraulic cylinders, and parts from machines nobody else in the county even remembered owning. To anyone else, it looked like chaos. To Raymond, it was order. Every shelf had a system. Every bin had a label. Every part had a reason for being there. And none of it had been collected by accident. It started in 1953, 3 days before his father died. They had been sitting on the porch, watching a storm roll across the plains, when his father told him something Raymond never forgot. Parts are money. Every bolt you keep is $1 you don't have to spend later. Every machine you save is a problem you won't have to solve when things go wrong. Then his father looked out at the storm and said one more thing. One day, everything will go wrong. And when that day comes, the man who kept the parts is the man who survives. Raymond built his entire life around that idea. While other farmers traded in equipment every few years, he repaired what he had. When neighbors scrapped machines, he bought them cheap and tore them down piece by piece. Winter after winter, he cleaned, sorted, labeled, and stored every usable part. They laughed at him for it. At the feed store, they called him cheap. At church, they called him stubborn. Some said he was stuck in the past. Raymond never argued. He had learned something most people never do. People who are sure they're right don't listen. So he let them talk. And he kept building. 40 years of parts. 40 years of solutions. 40 years of being wrong, according to everyone else. Until that night. The meeting room filled slowly. Farmers, neighbors, people Raymond had known his whole life. Some nodded at him, most didn't. Then the young man leading the complaint stood up. He wore clean clothes, spoke clearly, held a stack of photographs in his hand. Photos of Raymond's barn, his yard, his life. He called it a hazard, a disgrace, an embarrassment to the county. A few people laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, just enough to make it clear which side they were on. Raymond sat in the back row and said nothing. He didn't defend himself, didn't explain the system, didn't tell them how many times that junk had saved a harvest. He just listened, because he knew something they didn't, something none of them could see yet. In less than 3 weeks, the trucks would stop running. The parts would stop coming. The dealers would run out. And when their machines started breaking, and they always do, they would finally understand what that barn really was. Not a junkyard, a warehouse, a library, a lifeline. And when that day came, every man in that room would remember exactly where Raymond Cutter lived. 3 weeks later, everything stopped. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. On a Monday morning in May of 1985, the first reports came in over the radio. A nationwide trucking strike. At first, nobody in Harper County paid much attention. Strikes happened, delays happened. Things always work themselves out. By Wednesday, the dealers started getting nervous. By Friday, the shelves were already thinning out. Filters, belts, bearings, the small things that nobody thinks about until they're gone. And by the following week, there were no parts left. The John Deere dealer in town had a line out the door. Farmers standing shoulder to shoulder waiting for parts that weren't coming. The man behind the counter kept repeating the same sentence over and over. Back order. No delivery date. Check again next week. But next week didn't change anything because nothing was moving. No trucks, no shipments, no replacements. And then the machines started breaking. They always do. Not all at once. One farm here, one machine there, a snapped belt, a seized bearing, a hydraulic line that finally gave out after years of holding on. Normally those problems took a few hours to fix. A quick trip to the dealer, a replacement part. Now, they stopped entire operations. On the morning of May 28th, the first major breakdown hit the Hoffman farm. Kyle Hoffman was halfway through his wheat field when he heard it. A grinding sound, deep inside the combine. Not loud at first, just enough to make him ease off the throttle and listen. Then it got worse. Metal on metal. A sharp tearing noise that every farmer recognizes instantly. He shut the machine down, climbed out, opened the side panel, and saw the problem immediately. The main drive bearing. Gone. Not worn, not loose, destroyed. The housing was chewed up. The shaft scored. Pieces of metal sitting where they shouldn't exist. Kyle stood there in the field, staring at it, already knowing what this meant. This wasn't something you patched. This wasn't something you limped through. This was a dead machine. He drove straight to the dealer. The same line, the same faces, the same answer. No parts. Warehouse is empty. Could be weeks. Weeks. 200 acres of wheat, already at peak, already starting to turn. Every day the machine sat still, he was losing money. Real money. He called every dealer within 100 miles. Same answer. No parts. No timeline. By the third day, he stopped calling. There was no point. The machine sat in the field, silent. $180,000 of steel, completely useless. That night, Kyle stood at his kitchen window, looking out across his land. The wheat was ready, perfect, waiting, and he couldn't touch it. Behind him, his younger brother leaned against the doorframe. "You know who has that part," he said quietly. Kyle didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew. 7 miles down the road, a barn full of things they had called worthless, a man they had stood in front of the entire county and called a disgrace. Kyle kept staring out the window. "I'm not going there," he said finally. His brother didn't move. "You're going to lose the whole field," he said. Kyle's jaw tightened. "I said I'm not going." Silence filled the room. Then his brother said the one thing Kyle couldn't ignore. "Then you're choosing pride over survival." Kyle closed his eyes, and for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure he was right. Kyle didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence outside, knowing exactly what was happening in his fields while he did nothing. Wheat doesn't wait. It never has. Every hour matters. Every day costs. And every decision has a price. By morning, the choice was already made. He just hadn't admitted it out loud yet. At 6:40 a.m., Kyle walked out to his truck. He didn't grab his John Deere cap. Didn't want to wear it. Somehow, it didn't feel right. The drive took 7 minutes. 7 minutes of flat Kansas road, empty fields stretching in every direction, the same land he had driven 1,000 times without thinking. Today, it felt different. He drove slower, not because of the road, because of what was waiting at the end of it. Raymond Cutter's farm came into view exactly the way it always had. The barn, the piles, the parts. The same place Kyle had stood in front of a room full of people and called a disgrace. He pulled into the gravel drive and stopped. For a moment, he didn't move, just sat there with his hands on the steering wheel. Then he took a breath and stepped out. Raymond was already there, standing by the barn door, coffee in one hand, watching, like he had been expecting him. They stood facing each other across the yard. No greeting, no small talk, just silence. "I suppose you heard," Kyle said finally. "I heard," Raymond replied. "My combine's down." Raymond nodded once. "They tend to do that." Kyle swallowed. "Main drive bearing," he said. "Feeder housing." Raymond took a slow sip of coffee. "Sealed unit?" Kyle nodded. "About 8 inches?" Another nod. Raymond looked past him, toward the fields in the distance. "Bad place for it to go," he said quietly. Kyle felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't going the way he expected. No anger, no satisfaction, just calm. "I can't get the part," Kyle said. "I know." "Dealer's empty." "I know." "No one has it." "I know." Each answer landed heavier than the last, because Raymond wasn't surprised. He had been waiting for this. Kyle hesitated. This was the moment. The one thing he didn't want to say. The The one thing he had to say. I need your help. The words hung in the air between them. Raymond didn't answer right away. He set his coffee cup down slowly on a wooden post, looked at Kyle, really looked at him. The county meeting, Raymond said. Kyle's stomach dropped. I remember, Raymond continued, the pictures, the words. Disgrace, I believe you said. Kyle nodded slowly. I was wrong. Raymond didn't react. I didn't understand what I was looking at, Kyle added. Still nothing. I thought it was junk. Raymond tilted his head slightly. And now? Kyle took a breath. Now I think it's the only reason I still have a chance. Silence again. Longer this time. Then Raymond turned and looked into the barn. 40 years of parts. 40 years of being laughed at. 40 years of waiting for this exact moment. Come on, he said. Kyle blinked. That's it? Raymond shrugged slightly. Standing out here won't fix your machine. Kyle followed him inside, and for the first time, he stopped seeing a mess. He saw structure, systems, order hidden inside what used to look like chaos. Raymond moved through the barn without hesitation. Left turn, second aisle, back wall. His hands ran across shelves without even looking, stopping, skipping, selecting, like he already knew where everything was, because he did. Here, Raymond said finally. He pulled out a bearing, old, heavy, real steel. Kyle stared at it. Will it work? Raymond turned it in his hands. Not exactly the same, he said. Better. Kyle let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. Why are you helping me? He asked quietly. Raymond didn't look up. Your father helped me once, he said. Kyle froze. Long time ago, Raymond continued. Didn't ask questions. Didn't ask for money. Just showed up. Raymond finally looked at him. Figure I'm just returning the favor. Kyle nodded. Didn't trust himself to speak. Because in that moment, he understood something he should have understood a long time ago. This wasn't about parts. It wasn't about machines. It wasn't even about the harvest. It was about something older, something quieter, something no modern system could replace. And for the first time in his life, Kyle Hoffman realized he had been looking at the future and calling it the past. By that afternoon, Kyle Hoffman's combine was running again. Not perfectly, not smoothly, but running. The new bearing fit tighter than the original, stronger, simpler. Raymond had spent 2 hours in the field, adjusting, welding, aligning things that Kyle didn't even know could be adjusted. When the engine finally roared back to life, Kyle just stood there, staring at the machine like he was seeing it for the first time. $180,000 of modern engineering brought back to life by a part nobody else thought was worth saving. Keep your speed steady, Raymond said, wiping his hands. Don't push it too hard. That bearing will outlast the rest of the machine if you let it. Kyle nodded. He didn't say thank you. Not because he didn't feel it, because it wasn't enough, and they both knew it. Raymond picked up his tools, started walking back toward his truck. Mr. Cutter, Kyle called after him. Raymond stopped, didn't turn around. "I'll pay you," Kyle said. Raymond shook his head once. "No," he said. Then he kept walking. By the next morning, word had already spread. It always does in places like Harper County. One farmer tells another, a phone call becomes two. By noon, everyone knows. By evening, no one is surprised anymore. The first man showed up before sunrise, a farmer named Dale Peterson. His disc had thrown a blade in the middle of his field. The dealer told him 2 weeks. The crop wouldn't wait 2 days. He drove straight to Raymond's barn, didn't knock, just stood outside, hat in his hands. Raymond stepped out, looked at him once, and said, "What do you need?" By mid-morning, 2 more trucks pulled into the drive, then 3, then 5. Men who had never set foot on Raymond's property before. Men who had laughed. Men who had nodded along at the meeting. Now standing in line, waiting, quiet, because suddenly they understood. Inside the barn, Raymond moved the same way he always had, calm, precise, unhurried. He didn't rush, didn't panic, didn't treat it like an emergency, because to him, this wasn't new. This was exactly what he had been preparing for his entire life. "Second aisle," he said to one man. "Top shelf, left side, third box in." To another, "Back wall, under the transmission housings. You'll see it." And every time, he was right. Parts came off shelves, out of bins, as nobody else would have even thought to look. Old parts, strange parts, forgotten parts, and every single one of them fit. By the end of the first day, Raymond had fixed 4 machines. By the end of the week, 11. And still they came. From neighboring farms, from the next county over. Men driving 30, 40 miles just for a chance. They started calling it something. Not out loud at first, just between themselves. The barn. Like it was the only one that mattered. Because right now, it was. The dealers were empty. The trucks weren't moving. And every modern system they depended on had failed. But Raymond Cutter's barn was still working. By the second week, there was a line every morning. Engines idling in the gravel, men leaning against trucks, waiting their turn, not talking much, because pride doesn't survive long in a situation like that. And Raymond never mentioned the meeting, never brought it up, never reminded anyone what they had said. He just worked, part after part, fix after fix, keeping machines running, keeping harvests alive, until the day the deadline came. 30 days. The same deadline they had given him. The same day they were supposed to fine him, force him to clean up, shut it all down. That morning, Raymond didn't go to town. He stayed in the barn, working, like always, because he already knew something they were just about to learn. This time, the meeting was going to be different. The room was full again. Same chairs, same walls, same people. But nothing felt the same. On a Tuesday evening, exactly 30 days after the complaint had been filed, the Harper County Town Hall meeting began just like it had before. Routine business, road reports, budget notes. But this time, no one was really listening, because everyone in that room knew why they were there. And this time, It wasn't about Raymond Cutter anymore. It was about them. The chairman cleared his throat. Next item, he said slowly. Follow up on property compliance, Raymond Cutter Farm. A quiet moved through the room. Not uncomfortable, not tense, something else. Something closer to realization. Then Kyle Hoffman stood up. No folder this time, no photographs, just a single sheet of paper in his hand. He walked to the front of the room, and for a moment, he didn't speak. You could feel it, the weight of everything that had happened in the last 3 weeks. I'd like to withdraw the complaint, he said finally. No one reacted. Not yet. And replace it, he continued, with this. He placed the paper on the table. The chairman picked it up, adjusted his glasses, started reading, then stopped, looked up. How many signatures is this? 142, Kyle said. A murmur moved through the room. Not laughter this time. Recognition. Every name on that paper belonged to a farmer Raymond had helped. Every man who had stood in line at that barn. Every machine that was still running because of him. Kyle looked out at the room, at the same people who had laughed before. At the last meeting, he said, I called Raymond Cutter's barn a disgrace. He paused. I was wrong. No hesitation, no excuse, just truth. That barn isn't a problem, he continued. It's the only reason half the farms in this county are still operating right now. Silence again. Then someone in the middle row nodded, then another, and another, because they had all seen it, lived it, felt it. The chairman set the paper down slowly. All in favor of dismissing the complaint? Hands went up, one by one, then all at once. Motion carried, he said. Just like that. 40 years of being wrong, undone in 30 seconds. Raymond Cutter wasn't in the room. He hadn't come. Didn't need to. He was exactly where he had been every day for the past month. In the barn. Working. When Kyle pulled into the driveway later that night, the lights were still on inside. He stepped in quietly. Raymond was at the workbench, hands covered in grease, focused on a piece of machinery taken apart in front of him. You missed the meeting, Kyle said. Raymond didn't look up. I figured I would. Kyle stepped closer. The complaint's gone. Raymond nodded once. I figured it would be. Kyle let out a breath. They want to preserve it, he said. The barn, the parts, everything. That made Raymond stop, just for a second. Then he went back to work. Took them long enough, he said quietly. Kyle smiled slightly. Not because it was funny, because it was true. Why didn't you say anything? Kyle asked after a moment. At the meeting, before all this. Raymond tightened a bolt, set the wrench down, then finally looked at him. Would you have listened? Kyle didn't answer. Didn't need to. They both knew. No, Raymond said. Then he turned back to the workbench. People don't learn when you tell them, he added. They learn when they need something. The words hung in the air. Simple, quiet, final. Kyle looked around the barn one more time. The shelves, the parts, the system he had once called a mess, and now understood completely. Because the truth wasn't complicated. It never had been. Everything breaks. Systems fail. And when they do, the man who prepared is the man who survives. Raymond Cutter spent 40 years being laughed at for saving things nobody needed, until the day everyone needed them. And on that day, his junk became the most valuable thing in the entire county.